Good morning. It is a blizzard here in Fredericton, New Brunswick on the 24th of February, 2023. And I'm going to read chapter 22, just one chapter because it's quite long. And then I'll see you next week. Chapter 22. MJ opened her eyes and remembered where she was. She yawned and stretched and sat up on the side of her bunk. She carefully stood up and proceeded to do her morning ritual of urinating, washing her hands, brushing her teeth, and doing her Pilates stretches. She tried to do this regularly because she felt less pain when she did. She still felt pain whenever she moved, but this at least prevented some worse stress. This was the day she was to appear before the judge. It had been described to her several times by her lawyer what the process was, but she was still lost. She did as she was told because she wanted to get out and home to her sweetheart as soon as possible. At last, tomorrow, she would see Carrie. She grabbed a clean uniform and followed her cellmates between the guards to the showers. This was the area of the prison she was the most relaxed. The hot water pounding on her skin was close to sex for MJ. Pulling on clean clothes completed this exhilaration. As usual, there were several women loaded into the van to be transported to court or to nearby facilities. MJ was sad to say goodbye to Jane. They'd been cellmates since she first arrived. Jane had been mentor to MJ. She explained the expectations of the guards and the other women they were locked up with. Jane had been accused of killing her husband. It was well known that she had post traumatic stress disorder from a lifetime of abuse and that she finally snapped and let her husband drown when he fell off the boat as she struggled to escape yet another brutal assault. Because Jane had been the child of a Native woman and a white man, she'd been rejected by both races as a half breed and left to foster care. Before Jane was unloaded into the higher security prison, a guard allowed her and Jane as close to an embrace as the cuffs would allow. MJ kissed Jane's cheek and said, "Take care, sister." Jane turned away with tears in her eyes and followed the guard up the steps to her new home. As they pulled away, MJ wondered if they would ever meet again. Mark was waiting in a small room on the third story of a marble floored courtroom. This room featured deep red carpets, black leather furniture, and three windowed walls that the morning sunshine fell in through. He glanced at the laptop on the table before him and then at the elegant clock on the wall over the door she had entered. MJ rubbed the wrist where the cuffs had chafed and bent and twisted her wrist to stretch the tense muscles. He began with, "How are you doing?" "How do you think I'm doing? I've been drugged from hearth and homeland, and my life has been changed for what? For some unfounded, insane idea that I'm an evil terrorist. I sure can identify with those poor souls accused of witchcraft during the burning times." Mark sat placid while his client raved on. "Have you come to tell me finally they realize their silly mistake and are sorry and they'll pay my bills on my way back home and print an apology in the papers to show people back home that I am truly innocent?" "MJ, I wish I could tell you that was so, but that is not why we're here. Today you'll be formally charged under the Homeland Security Act. We'll be dealing with the findings of the Information Analysis and Infrastructure Protection Division. They collect and analyze information and intelligence data for domestic security coming in from the CIA, NSA, DIA, and the Justice Department's Drug Enforcement Agency. One unit analyzes threat, centralizing all data. They hope to. MJ distracts them from this explanation, tapping her foot while she struggles to keep her calm. Mark stops and asks, "What's wrong?" Speaking very slowly and softly, she answers, "If you don't know, then there's no point in me telling you." He sighed and continued, "This department assesses and communicates appropriate responses, actions, and suggests which federal or local officials need to be involved in preventive or protective actions. Specifically, we'll be dealing with the CIAO, FCIRC, and NIPC. for focus on security for computer, internet, and information technologies. The NISAC Counter Narcotics Officer coordinates narcotics interdiction efforts with other federal agencies and tracks and severs links between terrorism and illegal drug trafficking, which the administration believes funds terrorist organizations. The department is also responsible for the Homeland Security Advisory System, which issues warnings based on terrorist threats, activities, and potential attacks. So that is who and what we are dealing with. MJ grunts and sighs loudly, clenches her fist on her lap. Oh, yes, I'm familiar with the Homeland Security Act. I'm also aware this act muzzles whistleblowers from reporting public safety unit issues. So now, officials who blow the whistle on threats to public health, like uranium stockpiling or tainted blood, or private sector incompetence, poor maintenance of railroad tracks or computer networks, could become criminals. The act keeps citizens from filing class action suits against government contractors uh, and vaccine manufacturers. The government justifies it as incentive to the company's investment in research and development to create vaccines to fight potential terrorist threats like weapons like anthrax and smallpox and to protect them from the high cost of liability. Great act, this Homeland Security. I bet the Treasury Department's been transferred into that branch too. That would be very telling. You know what? When that department started, he shook his head and waited for her to go on, as he knew she would. The lawyer waited for the rant he knew was forthcoming. MJ continued. During Prohibition, they were coining it by busting bootleggers. They took all of bustees' money and equipment and stock. Imagine the funds they gathered. When Prohibition ended, they had to rationalize the keeping this large pool of labor because it was such a huge source of revenue. That was when marijuana and hashish and cocaine became controlled and prohibited substances. So now that department has gone on undoubtedly to pillage anyone suspected of terrorism. Bank accounts freeze, properties confiscated. Get the picture? They'll be sorely disappointed when they look at my bank balance, she chuckled. Mark tilted his head to the right, studied the woman. Is she hysterical? Is she disturbed? Can she really seriously be sitting in this room with him and not suspect that they're being observed? He shook his head in confusion, let out a long sigh, then snapped in irritation. Do you want to get out of here and home? She nodded enthusiastically. Then shut up. She looked down at the floor, rested her chin on her left hand, breathing deeply in an effort to control herself. Okay, then, he continued. They have multiple email messages and Facebook status updates with references to marijuana. Then there's a group in Israel that you have so much contact with. They seem to have distribution points for their dissemination all over the world. You have several cohorts through this group in North America. There's one in Canada, one in California, one in New York. And there was a guy in Louisiana you were in contact with several years ago. How do you explain these relationships? MJ pulled in a deep breath and let it out slowly. These people are fellow students of the philosophy I study. It would be something like friends you make in university or college classes. You're all taking in this new information, and there are very few people you can share and compare notes with, like those learning the same things in those classes. He keyed in notes on the dark blue laptop as she spoke. When he finished, he asked, what is this philosophy you are learning? It seems there is a very anti-American sentiment to it, according to the records. MJ scratched her head and snorted derisively. Come on! Anything with the word American or USA and it's swatted for their paranoia here. I've noticed that those who are the most afraid of people plotting behind their backs are those that are doing that to others. According to their rules, the only ones allowed free speech are Americans, same as they're the only one allowed weapons of mass destruction. Mark sighed pathetically, grabbed the bottle of water, gulped to the end. He shook his head and groaned. Can you stop with the anti-American commentary? I can't help you if you insist on hanging yourself with that big mouth. She sighed again. I'm sorry, but I'm a victim here of this insane abuse of power. I have at this point not much to lose except my integrity. What will I be without that? I don't even own a weapon. The only drugs I've ever used are pot, hash, or magic mushrooms. I've done all of my communication with these people in Israel online. I've never met any of them and only spoke to four of them on the phone. One's a senior citizen in Ontario who sells vitamin supplements. One is a senior citizen in California who's completely housebound due to a medical condition. One of them is a writer like myself, and the other is a teacher, and so is his wife. We met in online classes and used to exchange ideas about what we were learning in the course. Does that sound like these people could do any harm? Mark's phone rang and he answered it. He nodded and affirmed the caller's request and disconnected. Come on, NJ, we have to go. We're late and for heaven's sake, don't volunteer any information. Answer questions, then shut up. She picked up her sweater and glared at him. She still smarted, recalling telling her great grandmother one day how mad she was about how someone had treated her. Her gram responded, "Only dogs get mad." Probably this saying had been applied to correct the use of the strong word mad in place of the emotion anger, but she felt truly put down. At age 17, she got the unspoken message even more loud and clear when she showed her great grand bruises and cuts on her person from her husband's most recent assault, and she was met with, "Well, if you knew when to shut up, you wouldn't be hit." Reiterating the same message, suffer abuse quietly or you'll embarrass the family. That was burning her up right now. How this was more the abuse she'd settled on for much of her life. Of course, under the stress of the situation, she returned to her vulnerable young self who cried, "Why me?" And then shortly she remembered that she was a child of God. She remembered the truth of her origins, the fact that her Creator wished for her to enjoy the best. In her 20s, she struggled to finally feel the experiences of the childhood she had split from to survive. Her great catharsis was a result of a piece of creative writing inspired during the process of claiming her power. That process was spurred on by a retreat for adult children of dysfunctional families, several years of searching for wild plants, for food and medicine, and leaving her relationship with her first girlfriend, getting immersed in First Nation spiritual traditions. She adopted a blend of Native and Celtic practices, finally culminating in taking her new name after her healing. Her new name project took several years. Finally, she decided on the one and created the personal ritual that she invited her friends to. She began with a symbolic bath. Then she entered the guest filled living room in an antique cotton Victorian nightdress reminiscent of a baptismal gown. They embraced her as a group, and then she had to break through their locked arms to be born. She struggled more than she expected and began to panic with claustrophobia as they released her. Then she went around to each one and introduced herself by her new name. The event fell into a potluck feast, and then a traditional talking circle closed a special rite. For some years, she was only using this name for herself as a pen name, but decided to own it legally at last several years ago. The final transformative healing coup was accomplished when with the community support she received to stage and direct a play about her life story. The fans wanted to know when it would be filmed or staged again, as they had so many friends and family members. They wanted to witness the unfolding of the healing. Many had seen and heard stories that began as hers had, but no one had ever finished the tale with the acceptance and forgiveness she had found in her journey. She came to from her reverie as they entered the courtroom, and she was placed at the table by the bailiff while her lawyer approached the district attorney. After a lengthy conference, he returned and took the hardwood chair beside her behind the table. The bailiff emerged from the door of the left of the bench and announced, "All rise, Judge Maeve Martin presiding." The gray-haired woman with regal bearing seated herself at the bench behind her. The judge seemed to have a slight tremor in her neck, making her head shake almost imperceptibly. She studied the file of papers before her patiently. Mark caught MJ's eye and shot her a warning glance. MJ gave her a baleful look, then a fake smile as she ground her teeth. The judge ordered her to approach and take a seat in the witness box. MJ rose carefully and slowly and stiffly made her way up, and after swearing an oath to tell the truth, she sat in the enclosed seat at the front of the room and let out a great mournful sigh. The mic caught the sound and some whispered comments. As the bailiff read out the charges, the judge said, "You understand that you are in this country to stand on charges of terrorism?" MJ nodded. The judge added, "I need you to answer with your voice, please." MJ meekly answered, "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." "How do you plead to these charges?" "Innocent, Your Honor." "You have a choice between trial by judge or trial by judge and jury. What do you choose?" "Trial by judge and jury, Your Honor." After several minutes comparing day planners with court's available sessions, it was declared that the hearing would begin 2 months from that day. MJ sat quietly while tears poured down her cheeks. Thank God, at least she had Carrie to look forward to today. She would see her beloved wife later. But she knew Carrie would be beside herself by this news. 2 months till court. 2 months. That's it for this week. Saw you next week. Bye bye.